for those that are thinking of starting something in the space, make sure you're solving a real problem, not just something that you think is a problem, but talk to as many people in the industry as you can, to validate, is this an actual problem? And
The trucking industry is crazy right now, and being a broker can be stressful. Managing your invoices, billing, collecting, carrier base, and cash flow can feel like an impossible task. But I can tell you OTR Solutions has figured out the impossible. They eliminate cash flow problems for carrier payments and ensure margin funding in just 24 hours with broker invoice factoring. OTR Solutions takes care of billing and collection processes with your shippers. And with lightning quick and accurate invoicing, your customers will never need another broker to handle their freight needs. Kick back, relax, and let OTR take care of your brokerage. If you want to know more, and I hope you do, check them out at otrsolutions.com/freight-caviar or text OTRFC to 80483 to see what they can do for your business.
We've partnered with Ascend TMS, the world's most popular and top-rated transportation management system. It's the ultimate tool for all your freight needs. You can use our referral code RA-FreightCaviar! To receive 3 months of Ascend TMS for free. It only takes 20 seconds to sign up and no credit card is required. You can click the link below to learn more.
Receive $200 off your ticket at Manifest using our link today. We are excited to once again partner with Manifest for their upcoming event, Manifest Vegas, from February 5th to 7th, 2024. Dubbed the world's largest global supply chain and logistics tech gathering that promises a unique blend of Fortune 500 supply chain executives, fresh startups, and tech pioneers. Be among the 4,500 plus supply chain innovators, and remember, by using our exclusive link, you can save $200 off your ticket. Don't miss out.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Freight Caviar Podcast. Today's guest is Pam Simon, the Connectiv Conference Chair and Executive Vice President of Manifest. Pam, thank you for joining us today. Could you start out by telling us a little bit about yourself, including your career journey leading up to your current role as Conference Chair and EVP at Connectiv?
Sure, and thanks for having me. So I'm from Providence, Rhode Island. I went to George Washington University in DC. Spent a lot of time in New York, where I was working in tech and very heavily involved in the New York tech space, launching my own event there, a Future of series, and then spent 5 years in Brazil. So 3 years in Rio, 2 in Sao Paulo, and produced the first demo day to ever take place in the country for an accelerator. So now when you go to any of the demo days that happen in Brazil or across LATAM, it's the format that I had put together in 2011. And then also produced the largest Entrepreneur Week to take place in Brazil, and then launched LATAM Founders, a private network for investors and executives in tech across Latin America. Now, how did I get into just logistics? Well, that's when I joined Lab Ventures in Miami, which is a venture fund and venture builder, if you will, as a partner here. And when we started building companies, the areas that we were focusing on were travel, real estate, and logistics, because those are the areas that dominate business in Florida. From my experience, the best way to build and strengthen relationships across a wide environment is really from events. So think of me as an ecosystem builder and bringing all those pieces together. So we had launched Future of Logistics series, and in 2019, Connectiv acquired the series. So now what it is Manifest today. For me, logistics was the most interesting and by far the most dynamic for what's to come. There's a lot of room for innovation. So as soon as the sale was done, I was like, I want to stay with logistics and do Manifest. So here we are today.
Oh, that's an amazing story. I love that background.
Dude,
very interesting.
That's crazy. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, events, like magic happens at events.
It does.
Like, when did you first realize that?
I feel like I've always I've always been doing events. I've always been putting people together. I've always been a connector of people. So, I mean, even since I was little, I was helping my mom with the Play for Pink golf tournaments, and doing mayoral campaigns. So I did the whole politics thing, worked for Kennedy most of college. And then, clearly the event side of it stuck with me, not so much the politics.
So Pam, okay, because you have an extensive like history. You started in Brazil, or I guess when you spent 5 years in Brazil. Why Brazil?
We moved for my husband's job. Honestly, that's why we moved. It was supposed to
Okay.
be a 6-month thing.
Yeah.
And 5 years later, and I started a company there. So then we were living about 3 years, Brazil, New York, Miami, kind of 2 months, 2 months, 2 months, 2 months.
Okay. Wow. How was it? How was Brazil?
It was amazing, and it was an incredible experience. It was hard because I had to basically start myself all over again. I had never been to Latin America. I'd never been.
Did you learn Portuguese like pretty well?
Yeah, I took intensive Portuguese classes. I can understand. I can understand everything. My speech is a little bit slower. Like I still have to translate in my head. So a lot of times my Brazilian friends would just rather me speak in English.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Is there like a vibrant tech scene out in Brazil? How does that look like?
Yes, there's tons of amazing companies coming out of Brazil, and a lot of unicorns actually. So when you look at the map of some of the unicorns today, like Logi and Nubank, those are folks that I used to share a desk with when they were just starting their businesses.
Wow. Very interesting. And from like investor wise, are a lot of like American VCs investing in Brazil, or are those like separate like entities in Brazil making those investments?
It's more Latin American based investors that are investing in LATAM. There are a few
Okay.
funds global, right? So your Excel and SoftBank and Sequoia, Tiger, those are ones that are global, but typically you'll see more of the investors that are investing in Latin America based in Latin America.
Okay, very cool. I was flying from Frankfurt to Tampa back in April, and I sat next to a guy who's a CEO of a company that does like restaurant. They do restaurant factoring in Brazil, and he was part of the Y Combinator, and we just had a pretty interesting talk. And so that was pretty cool. Kind of like definitely opened up like I guess the whole Latin kind of VC world to me in a way, having that conversation with him, because we're mostly just focused on like the domestic US side. But that's very interesting. Pam, so you spent 5 years in Brazil and then you decided to move to Miami?
Well, we were living, so basically my husband got promoted, which was great for him, but I had started LATAM Founders in Sao Paulo. So he was traveling most weekdays. So we basically were living 2 months, 2 months, 2 months, Brazil, New York, Miami, as a way to continue our businesses and avoid winter. And as you can see now, I live in Miami. So
yeah. Okay. So when you moved to Miami, you started the Venture Labs.
So actually, the partners of Lab Ventures, I have known them for years. They were actually speakers at events that I had done decades before. So when they were in the fund, I was the first phone call of, hey, there's 3 of us. We'd love for you to be our partner. And, we loved being in Miami. So this was the perfect opportunity to just take it and move down.
That's awesome. I love that.
I feel like the Miami tech scene has blown up in the last couple of years.
Yeah, it goes up and down, right? I think that there's always these huge waves. There was the whole crypto wave. So there's always a lot of that, a lot of those folks. And then, with COVID, that definitely brought a lot of folks. I think some of them are still staying, but, we're hopeful some of them will go back.
Yeah, I feel like there was definitely a kind of an exodus from Silicon Valley down to Miami. I know the mayor is Suarez still the mayor down there?
Yeah. He's super active. He's like everywhere.
Yeah,
So,
and he kind of put up the bat signal essentially, and like brought up brought just like a bunch of tech bros from probably some undesirables as well, who were really just looking to escape California, harsh COVID policies, right? And just generally like the California environment. But I feel like I have seen some of them like publicly stating that they're going back to Silicon Valley now. It's kind of like in vogue to go back there, it feels like.
I mean, that works for me.
Yeah.
It works for me. I have a 6-year-old, so like competing for childcare and stuff like that just got much more dramatic. So yes, I mean, some are definitely staying, and we'll see. We'll see what happens. Or a lot of snowbirds. I think we'll see a lot more of the snowbird lifestyle.
Yeah,
for sure.
Hey there, amazing listeners. If you're enjoying what you're hearing on our podcast, we need your support. It will only take a moment, but it would mean the world to us. Please make sure to hit the like button on this video, subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to share with one of your friends that would enjoy our content. Your engagement helps us reach more people and bring more awesome episodes to you. Thanks a million, and thanks for being part of the podcast community.
I'm curious, Pam, like whose idea was it to start the Future Logistics Conference? And that what you said that was in 2019 was the first show?
It sold in 2019.
Sold in 2019, okay.
So the first one was 2017. And it was me because, as I said, like for me, the best way to get the ecosystem together is to host an event, right? And I have a pretty wide network from around the world, and to be able to bring all the different pieces of the puzzle together, that's really how it started. Additionally, it always kind of bothered me that there's so many different industry events, and yet they don't talk to each other, right? So you have events that are really freight focused and just over the road. You have events that are just, ocean and shipping and maritime. You have air cargo. But at the end of the day, if you're a chief supply chain officer or, a director of operations, you actually need to know what's happening across the whole supply chain, not just those specific areas. So it was always my goal to bring the whole chain together, to have those conversations so that it can avoid some of the bottlenecks or inefficiencies that are, having ripple effects across.
Yeah. So you've seen it all from like the last 6 years, 7 years, looking kind of down on everyone in a way where, because you've built this ecosystem, you could see the changes that are occurring and taking place. What are like your takeaways from like the last 6 years? What are like the major changes that you've seen take place in that ecosystem?
Across the industry or
yeah, across the industry, like the logistics industry as a whole, because you have like connected everyone kind of in a way.
So I think that we've seen a lot more automation. The future of work looks completely different, from 6 years ago as it does to today. So the different robotics companies that are out, the different AI and different technologies that companies have in place to make things more efficient. Sustainability and climate have definitely become more top of mind and a bigger focus than from before, right? It's always been something that's been talked about and a little bit of kind of greenwashing back then. And now it's something that companies are really caring about and trying to figure out how to address those issues so it won't cost them significantly, as the different laws change.
Yeah. You mentioned in 2 statements ago, you mentioned kind of curating an event for, a chief supply chain officer, somebody who is playing in multiple silos, so to speak, and really building an event that was not a siloed sort of thing. Like, do you view like that person, that cohort, as like your target audience, so to speak? Like, are you like viewing them as like the attendee that you want to please the most? Like, who are you trying to attract to these sorts of events?
So I wouldn't say there's one over the other, right? I don't want to pick favorites. I love all of my speakers and attendees.
Good answer.
But it's about the ecosystem, right? So we'll start with the chief supply chain officer. From their perspective, to be able to connect with the different technologies and not only connect with it, but see, touch, feel, interact with it, really makes a difference, because then you can kind of determine what's the right fit for your organization. So from a chief supply chain officer, with Manifest, you'll be able to connect with all of those technologies. You'll be able to connect with investors to understand where they're putting their dollars and why they're investing in some of these areas. As well as, we do have some kind of closed roundtable sessions so that there is peer-to-peer networking, right? So that they can also talk to each other. From the investor side, at this year's show, we had over 150 different funds in attendance, and that's the gamut of investing. So for a fund, it's a great experience to be able to, not only connect with other co-investors for, different deals, to share deal flow opportunities, to have your portfolio of companies that are scattered all over the world in one place, as well as to be able to connect and learn from the different corporates and shippers that are there to understand what problems that they're facing with and what technology and solutions would be the right fit for them, right? So that also helps from an investor standpoint of where should I be putting my money. And then from, startups and technology, if you're looking for funding, obviously all the investors are there. If you're not, you eventually will be, right? I mean, as a startup, you're constantly fundraising. It just is what it is. So it's good to start establishing those relationships earlier on. It's also the opportunity for them to connect with shippers, understand what problems they're dealing with, the challenges they face, what technology has been working for them or what areas they're more interested in and how you can work with them. From the shows that we've done, it's led to a number of investment rounds, a lot of different pilots, and customers and clients. So a lot of business really gets done at the show. This year, over 60,000 meetings took place that we know about. I mean, a lot more than that.
Yeah.
They tell you.
That's an interesting point, like attribution, right? Like, how do you think about attribution? How do you measure, the success of an event beyond just attendees?
It's a great question. It's
hard. I mean, it's really hard.
It's hard.
Yeah.
Well, 60,000 meetings is a good way to start.
Yeah, that's a lot. A lot of meetings,
Yeah.
a lot of positive feedback. I get updated by different companies and people constantly working with this company that I met at Manifest, or I invested in this company.
Yeah. I had a great time at Manifest. Actually, I kind of just want to real quickly talk about my experience. What I really enjoyed about Manifest is that you created an ecosystem where it brings everyone kind of together. It's not really specific to an industry. It's specific to logistics, but it's the entire ecosystem. So I learned a lot just from seeing all the new companies I never heard of before, connecting with people that I would have never probably have met at a different conference. So it really opened up to me the whole logistics world. And I thought it was not only that, but it was also very entertaining, because I think a lot of conferences out there are kind of boring. They make it kind of dull, and you actually at Manifest, you're just having fun, but you're also being very productive networking. And so I enjoyed it greatly. And being in Vegas too at the same time, you could go to the casino, you could have the after parties. The Nelly concert was one of the better concerts I've ever attended. So that was a lot of fun overall. And so I'm also curious, because we interviewed before Ramel Watley, who does Truck and Hustle, and he has his own conference that he built up, and he said that if he had known what it would take in order to create a conference to begin with, he would have never have done it again. So I'm curious, how was 2017? What were the struggles and the challenges? How many people showed up in 2017, and getting acquired 2 years later? That's a great success. So can you kind of talk through that? I'm curious about the history of all that.
Yeah, of course. And events are not for the faint of heart. I mean, that's the reaction that I would say majority of people get if you don't do events regularly. There are so many different things to deal with and details to pay attention to. At the beginning, because it was something that was just my idea and my partners were like, yeah, go for it. I had 2 other people helping me, and it was, we were all 3 of us kind of just wearing every hat under the sun to make it happen. Those events, I think, was the first one was I think about 250 people, and then the next one was about 500. It was closed, so we didn't have to deal with as much of the AV side of things, right? So with Manifest, we have full, video production, and we record all of the sessions and we share everything and it's visible. This was more of a closed conversation, so we didn't have that side of it. But now, I mean, with the acquisition, to be able to work with such an amazing team that, from an operations standpoint, they've been doing this, like they're industry veterans, they are pros. So to be able to work with people that really understand all the nuances and all the different small, minute details that need to, be addressed has been such a wonderful experience, and so much less stressful when you aren't doing every single aspect of it on your own.
Totally.
It's interesting because I got a little bit of a peek behind the curtain when I did my presentation a couple weeks ago, because I was backstage and I was talking to the production people
at F3.
At F3, yeah, and I was like there was like a woman whose sole job it was to like carry cables so the guy in front of her didn't trip, and like she's like, yeah, I just carry cables, and I'm just like, oh my god, like that's like one person. There's like hundreds of people back here, and they're all doing these like individual tasks, and it's so well organized. You could, if you're doing a conference when you start, maybe you just get like a ballroom at like a resort or something like that, and you have like one projector, and you do all that. But then when you realize, like, if you actually want to put on something that like is professional, like it is so much more work that you never probably even think about. And it just like kind of blew my mind, and also just gave me a tremendous amount of respect for people who are able to put on events that are like very well produced. Because when you're an attendee at those sorts of things and you don't have an understanding of what goes on behind the scenes, you're just like, oh, this is like an event, like this is cool, it's fun, but like you don't understand how hard it is to actually do it. So I imagine when you're at events like this, and I've heard great things about Manifest, so I'm assuming it's much the same, you probably are on the job the whole time, right? Like you're not there having fun it's probably fun, but you're not there as an attendee. It's not the same thing.
No, I mean, for me, I mean, obviously, there's different roles and everybody is doing everything at all times. So, yes, my day starts around like 4 a.m. and I'll go until 2 a.m. and then be back downstairs. So it's a constant. Yeah. But we're fortunate to be able to, you divide and conquer, right? You kind of make the assignments early, you go through it. If someone needs to shift, you have to make sure that they can get covered. So it's just a lot of like pre-planning, and also just, similar to logistics, right? Like thinking about what are the possible outcomes if XYZ happens, or if something goes wrong, what do you do? So, reverse planning all of that as well.
I could imagine just like the coffee itself costs a lot of money. How much does a coffee cost, like at Manifest?
Well, the coffee lounge is sponsored by Viho.
Okay. So does that mean that the sponsor pays for all the coffee when it has that? Like,
yeah, I believe so.
Okay. Wow.
So we're unique in the sense where like Manifest is a unique show where we really do keep sponsor and speaker kind of separated, like church and state style. So it's not pay to play. And so, we have our sponsors, Dan runs sponsorship, and, our ops team, and they'll work with the sponsors to figure out all the different activations that they want to be doing. And Danzel and I handle all of the content related to things. But we do some cool, in addition to the coffee, One Rail sponsoring a beer garden. We have Softion sponsoring rosé all day. There's a mocktail, an ice cream social. There's, a spa. There's something for everybody. So it's also just thinking outside the box of how can we surprise and delight? Like we actively want you to come in and be like, oh my God, like, wow.
That's exactly how I felt when I was here last year. Did you say there's a spa, Pam?
Yes, there will be. Blackberry Radar is sponsoring a spa. So if you need, and there's also a touch-up studio as well. And Dematics is doing a headshot studio. So if you need to trim or shave your beard or get your nails done or fix your makeup or your hair, we have all that covered.
Well, I got my headshot taken at Manifest last year, and it was a great headshot.
That's a good idea. That is a good idea. That's the kind of thing that you want, but you doing it yourself is kind of a pain.
Exactly.
And most people aren't going to go to like a studio to have that done.
Right. So this way you can do it. You'll meet someone new in line, right? So these like really unique ways that you can interact and develop friendships or, working relationships with people while you're waiting in line, or even in the puppy lounge, which is my personal favorite.
Mm-hmm.
You can go and just snuggle. Yeah. And actually even adopt if you're so moved.
Wow. How many how many adoptions have taken place at Manifest? That's an interesting stat.
I believe 3.
3?
I think so, yeah.
I can imagine like some guy or girl goes to a conference and like they come home and they're like, hey, I got a dog.
Yeah. Literally, I remember I had a speaker like FaceTiming his wife being like, this is our new addition.
Wow.
That's remarkable. We need this dog. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Pam, I know you mentioned some of the challenges in organizing Manifest. Like, is there anything else that you'd want to like kind of touch on, like when it comes to like creating a conference? Because getting thousands of people to come in, especially right now, this one next year that's taking place from the 5th to the 7th, 2024, is right before Super Bowl weekend. That is taking place in Vegas. Has that like caused any disruptions for you at all, or no?
I mean, yeah, we just like to challenge ourselves, apparently. The first year of the show was in the middle of the Omicron wave. I will say that was, in my entire career, I would say the 2 weeks in the show were the most stressful of my entire life. Simply because, you're so focused on making sure that we're creating a safe environment for all of these people that are coming in. And with so many different opinions and viewpoints on what safety means to different people, that was quite challenging, but happy to say no cases. So we figured it out. I'm glad, but we're going to hope, knock on wood, we never do that again. But we figured it out. I think with Super Bowl, it's a little bit crazy. I mean, I don't know if you know this, but when Super Bowl, takes a city, they actually start the process about 3 weeks before.
Okay.
So you had mentioned the Nelly concert. It was at Brooklyn Bowl this year, and we loved the venue. And you're like, oh, we'd love to work with you again. And they're like, yeah, sorry, it's already been booked. Finding different venues, I think, with Super Bowl, that's been tricky. I think with hotel rooms, we have our blocks, we have our rooms. But that said, going into this year, we sold out of our room blocks like 3 different times, had to keep buying new room blocks. And, if with Super Bowl, I think once they announce the teams, things will get.
Yeah.
If you haven't booked your hotel room yet, please do so. You will thank me. Otherwise, you'll be, hiking from 45 minutes away, which we see people unfortunately doing this year.
Yeah, I booked it in June. So yeah, it was just nice and easy. I got it booked up for a good rate. And I remember last year I booked it up last minute and I got a bad rate and a bad hotel. So yeah, definitely worth it.
There you go.
Booking it soon. Okay. Very interesting. I mean, I love that it's in Vegas too. Is that like the reason why you chose Vegas? Because it's obviously like a fun city to go to.
All of our shows, so all of Connectiv shows are in Vegas.
Okay.
From a global perspective, it just makes the most sense when you have people coming from Europe, from Asia, from LATAM. It's a place that people want to go to. Also, there's direct flights.
Yeah.
It's got the infrastructure. I mean, doing events in Miami for years was really, really challenging because people don't understand. They don't live and breathe the events space the way they do in Vegas. We're like, this is people's jobs all year round. There are shows happening every single week in Vegas. So there's just a different understanding of time management and execution and how things need to be done in a way that works across like the whole ecosystem of what you're trying to produce.
Sure. That makes sense. Reed, do you want to add anything?
Yeah. I mean, it makes, if you guys, how many events does your company like put on besides Manifest?
There's Blueprint, which is on the prop tech side, Medicarians, the medical side. We recently sold ITC Connect, which is the largest insurance tech conference in the world, and recently sold the HRT, which is a human resources show.
Okay, so a bunch. So I mean, you're probably working with the same people. I mean, there's a lot of benefit if you're doing that many shows to being in a place where people do shows, and you probably have really good working relationships with the people who produce the shows, and
it helps. It helps. And then also, I mean, we already have our dates and locations in Vegas for the next few years. So I mean, I'm able to start planning 2025 and 26.
Wait, so those other shows were sold?
Two of the other shows were just sold, yes.
Interesting. Were those acquisitions as well?
Yes, but on even bigger scales, right? So with insurance, with ITC, that acquisition was to an even bigger event company that does thousands huge events around the world.
I mean, it's an interesting business because it is so insanely valuable. But to my question earlier about like attribution, it's so hard to measure outcomes, but it's so obvious that there are outcomes because people will call you and they'll tell you. But like, so everyone knows they're insanely valuable, but it's really hard to peg down like exactly the value, right? And it's just, but that's what makes it like an interesting business to me, at least. Like, I think events are awesome, frankly. I want to learn a lot more about them. I don't even have a question. I'm just saying that.
No, it is. And actually, I mean, so Manifest was nominated for 3 awards at the TSE Gold 100, which, is the event for the event,
Yeah.
So we were nominated for Best Use of Technology, Most Innovative Show, and Best Launch. We won Best Launch. So very exciting. And for Innovate, we were up against CES, which has been around forever, for Most Innovative Show.
What is your favorite event that you go to besides your own?
Mine.
Come on, you have to have one that's not yours.
I don't know. I feel like I really go to my own. The TSE 100 was really unbelievable just because it was the first time that I actually went to an event with other event people.
Yeah.
Which is strange. But
is there one in the past that you've been to in your entire career that sticks out as like that was like a really good event?
I mean, my favorite kind of go to for myself is Summit at Sea, which is a conference on a cruise ship.
Oh, wow.
I've been doing that one for years. My friends from college actually started the company and the business. So
Summit at Sea. That's cool.
Yeah. Where does that leave from?
It leaves from Miami.
Oh, so it's in your backyard. That helps.
That's convenient. And Branson is one of the investors, so he's always there. And we was on the Virgin cruise ship this year. So for me, I mean, I like that because it's a real mix of physical activity as well as content, as well as wellness and food, kind of all of it.
That's cool.
Definitely. I'm curious, Pam, like if someone, for example, like listening to our show, like was like, oh, I want to start a conference, like what would you tell them, like right off the bat? And then like realistically speaking, like what's like the minimum amount of capital you would need? And I know it depends on like how big of a scale you want to have the event be, but like let's just say like you want like 500 people at the first event.
I mean, you need a really thick skin and you need to be scrappy. With my Future of Logistics show, we really didn't have any budget or money to really work with. So it's tapping into all of your network for favors and for help or discounts. Know your audience, know your ecosystem, do the research first. Going into, just saying, oh, I want to do an event in this industry, like, great. You need to actually map out who the players are from every single direction and actually see if it makes sense. and also determine who the buyer is. Like, who's going to sponsor this show? Who are you going to work with to do this? Because you need partners, you need folks in the industry to champion what you're doing. So it's tapping into those relationships. I would say has as many conversations as you possibly can, and ask every question just to like really understand, like, what would people get value from? Is it content? Is it experience? Is it, showcasing technologies? Is it presentations? Like, there's also different types of formatting. So really understanding, what your goals are and how, how it will impact the ecosystem that you're looking to work with. When it comes to cost, I mean, I've done things really, really scrappy before. So, I mean, it's hard to say, but with 500 people, you definitely need, I would say, feed people, I personally hate going to events where they have like food trucks outside and then you have to wait in line with like 800 people and then, wait for your order. And I find that to be an unbelievable waste of time. Where with Manifest, like, the food's amazing. It is a whole white glove experience. There's full breakfast, full lunch, there's different activations. And it's a really smooth process. Like, it's just, and it's also easy to network with people, and it's not frustrating because people aren't, standing outside sweating, waiting for their smelling like all the smoke of their order. So if there's a way you incorporate food is more costly than you would think, but that makes a difference. Food and drink make a big difference.
Totally. I'm curious, like, as well, like, do conferences make more money off of sponsors or attendees?
It's a combination.
So it's like split, basically.
A combination, yeah.
Okay, got it. And just real quick, to return to the capital side of like how much we need capital, like, would you say, like, just say you're really scrappy, you want 500 people, you want to feed them, you want to get them coffee, like, they obviously, the sponsors, if they get sponsors and they get attendees, should eventually pay for that, but you need upfront capital, right, to actually to book everything. 100,000, 200,000, more. I don't know.
Paul's planning an event.
No, I'm not. I would never do an event. I'm being serious. I'm being more like just honestly curious of like what the capital side of things would look like.
I mean, it also depends on the venue, right? Like, a venue just by itself with nothing in it at all, just like a blank space, you could easily be 20 to 30 grand, right? So, like, it really depends on the venue too. Like, if a venue has seating included already, if you need to bring in furniture, if you need to bring in a stage, if you need to bring in AV, it really, I wish I could give a specific answer, but it really depends on the venue that you're working with and like what that venue can provide you, right? So sometimes lumped all in with like, okay, it's 50 grand and it includes the AV and the chairs and some of the setup.
Okay.
That's like a base, right?
Sure.
If you're gonna do it, be like five grand for like a cocktail.
Okay.
So the closest thing I've ever done to this is just planning my wedding, which I actually really didn't. I mean, I had a wedding planner, but like they asked me a bunch of questions. And I was like, oh my God, like there's way too many questions here. So I can only imagine for that sort of thing. But anyway, one thing that's interesting about just events in general is there's a big upfront kind of capital requirement. You spend a ton of time essentially building a product that you cannot get feedback on until it's already happened, right? Yeah. There's no real, like, you can iterate year to year based on feedback, but the first time you do one, you like have nothing, you really are just kind of flying blind, right? In a sense. So like, how do you think about that? How do you think about like iterating on feedback? Like, it's an interesting kind of limitation of operating in the real world in that sense.
I mean, when it comes to figuring out the content, at least, from that standpoint, I do a lot of research. I read a lot of reports and white papers and articles. I have regular catch-ups with a lot of people in the industry that are in different roles. to really understand, what their issues are, what their problems are, their challenges, where can technology play a role, what's working, what's not working, from the investor side, what are they seeing? So I ask a lot of questions. Like I take a lot of notes, I ask a lot of questions, and then we can kind of adjust, right? So this year, as an example, the kickoff day of the show includes 3 symposiums. This year it's going to be, or coming up, it's maritime sustainability and intermodal. This year's show, it was maritime sustainability and intelligent infrastructure. So, from what we've learned, maritime and sustainability are 2 areas that are here to stay. Like that's the thing, no matter what, because there's so much interest. There's so many different things that we can still be talking about. Switching or changing the third one from intelligent infrastructure to going to intermodal, it's listening to the industry and kind of, how are things shifting, right? And where should we be focusing? I think intelligent infrastructure is still super important. And we do have conversations that, evolve around those during Manifest, but there's still a lot of hardware and kind of actual infrastructure things that need to be done before it has that immediate impact. That's why there's a shift, right? I listen to what people are saying. And then even thinking about for 2025, climate is going to play a bigger role. It already is there. So I do also test, some subjects. So like, there's always a few panels that, in my mind are testing ground to understand. A lot of people go, what was the feedback? Did they like it? Would they want it again? Because there are some things that I think are super interesting, but I don't know if 100% if the ecosystem will feel that way too.
Interesting.
Good answer.
Yeah. I know, Reed, you found like a new interest in maritime, like overall, like in that side of things. And then your really good friend, Rob, who's also my friend, loves intermodal. And so like, we got to get Rob to come to Manifest. We had CPKC, the Canadian Pacific Kansas City line, take us to a Blackhawks game a couple months ago in Chicago, box seats, which was pretty cool because of Rob, Reed's good friend.
I'm very excited for this, actually. Not actually, I'm just very excited. I love events, and I think this is going to be awesome.
Yeah.
No question. Question.
Are you talking about Rob from the Intermodal Association?
No, he's a broker. I mean, he's probably part of it, but I don't think he's involved in planning it. His name's Rob Liss. He's just a good friend. But no, I mean, I think, yeah, and it's so easy, especially when you work in the industry. It's so easy to be so kind of like this all the time. Like as a broker, I was like living and breathing truckload for 7 years, and I didn't think about anything else. And then you take a step back and you look around, you're like, holy cow, like there's so many different industries, there's so many different things to get exposure to that, like, it's just, you miss in your day to day. And it's going to be cool to go and learn about a bunch of like other stuff. I'm excited.
Yeah. And if for the maritime side of things, I mean, we've had a lot more of the ports joining us as well. So we have ports from Barcelona, Long Beach, Miami, Ashdod, Rotterdam. So you'll be able to also hear, how all the different ports from around the world are looking at maritime, and the different, technologies that they're implementing.
Yeah, I'm actually in the market for an oil tanker. So if there's any ship owners there, let me know.
There will be ship owners there as well. Off the top of my head, I don't know someone that's just looking to offload an oil tanker, but I'll keep my.
Just keep me posted.
Reed, you could find at Manifest, you could find an investor and a ship owner, so you could maybe find someone to fund it and then buy it all in one place.
I'll do that. I'll do that if Pam is willing to highlight that as a win of the show after the fact.
More than happy to.
All right, cool.
Awesome. Pam, overall, just to start wrapping things up a little bit, you see a lot of startups, in logistics. You talk to a lot of people. Like, can you tell us from what the insights that you've garnered through the years, like, what's your top advice for startups entering the logistics field? And on
Well,
top
I
of
think
that, just real quick, like, where do you see the future of logistics heading in the next decade?
Go to Manifest.
yeah, come to us to find out, obviously. For startups, I mean, to be blunt about it, I would say don't drag on about how hard it's been, because it's hard for every entrepreneur, and logistics is hard, generally speaking. So it's more about focusing on the product, the use cases, than the personal journey, at least when you're talking to people. For those that are thinking of starting something in the space, make sure you're solving a real problem, not just something that you think is a problem, but talk to as many people in the industry as you can, to validate, is this an actual problem? And is there anyone else that's already doing it? There's a lot of you see a lot of the same sort of companies pop up. So if you want to separate yourself and be different from everyone else, talk to the ecosystem to really understand the challenges that they're facing. And obviously come to Manifest so you can talk to all of the investors and corporates and shippers that will potentially greatly impact your business. So I would say that's a big my advice for startups. And the second part of the question, sorry.
Where do you see like the industry heading towards? I know that the three topics, maritime sustainability and intermodal, being a large focus. Like, where do you see overall, I guess, changes occurring in the logistics space over the next decade?
Well, obviously, with COVID, priorities have changed, right? So there's been a shift from, focusing on reducing costs to now working on resilience and product availability being increasingly more important. I think the closer the products are to the customer, the faster then they can receive it. And that will also have an impact on your sustainability, reporting, right? So I think automation is going to play a huge role in the future of work, and just overall the way things are moving around, whether it's within the four walls, within the yard, to your house, over the seas. Those are big areas. And sustainability is really up there, because now it's not just about having visibility into what your company is doing and what you're producing, but also what your partners are doing and how you're collaborating and working with the industry as a whole.
Got it. Yeah, I definitely hear a lot of sustainability. That's a very hot topic overall, and there seems to be some interesting players coming out for the reporting side of things. Definitely very cool. Reed, any final questions?
No, I don't think so. I'm excited. I think it's going to be. I've heard great things, and I'm excited.
Awesome.
Good. Great.
We'll see you there. I'll see you there, Pam.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Pam, for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me. And I'm looking forward to seeing you in person at Manifest February 5 to 7 at Caesars Forum in Las Vegas.
Awesome. Can't wait.
Sweet.
Thanks for tuning in to the Daily Freight Caviar Podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast, or if you didn't, leave a review. Let me know what you think. I appreciate any feedback. If you'd like to have more Freight Caviar content, go to freightcaviar.com and subscribe to my email newsletter.